Imagine a child who grew up in chaos, years of shouting, blame, or silence. As an adult, they don't just remember the pain, they carry it in their identity, in every relationship. That's not classic PTSD. That's something deeper, complex PTSD. So what exactly is complex PTSD? And why do so many people feel it describes their life better than the textbook version of PTSD? In this video, we're going to break down the key differences, clear up the confusion, and explore how long-term trauma shapes people in ways that often go unnoticed. You'll see why the debate around complex PTSD matters, not just for doctors, but for anyone who's ever lived through pain that didn't simply end when the event was over. Stay with me until the end, because we'll uncover a surprising truth about how society labels trauma survivors, and why those labels can change everything. 1. PTSD versus complex. PTSD. Classic PTSD usually develops after a single shocking event, like a car accident, a natural disaster, or a battlefield explosion. The symptoms are intense but specific: flashbacks, nightmares, and a constant sense of danger. Now imagine something different. Instead of one terrifying day, it's years of repeated harm, a childhood filled with neglect, bullying, or abuse. The scars don't appear as sudden flashbacks, but as deep patterns that shape how you see yourself and how safe you feel with others. Take, for example, a soldier who survived one explosion and a child who spent 10 years in a violent home. The soldier may jump at fireworks, but still sees himself as capable, even proud. The child, however, grows into an adult convinced that they are worthless, unlovable, and destined to be alone. The pain is not a single scar. It becomes the skin itself. Think of two lives unfolding side by side. One man survives a terrible car crash at 25. He can still recall the sound of metal twisting, the smell of gasoline, the blinding lights of the ambulance. Years later, fireworks on New Year's Eve send his heart racing. But once the noise fades, he can return to work, friends, and family. His trauma is sharp, but it comes and goes. Now picture a woman who spent her childhood locked in a bedroom for hours whenever her parents were angry. No loud explosion, no single incident, just endless days of silence, fear, and shame. As an adult, she doesn't flinch at fireworks. Instead, she feels invisible in meetings, apologizes for existing, and avoids close friends because she believes she is unworthy. Her trauma isn't a wound that reopens, it's the lens through which she sees everything. And here's the catch. Two people can both suffer from trauma, but one may struggle with nightmares, while the other spends a lifetime battling shame and isolation. Complex PTSD isn't just more PTSD, it's trauma that rewires identity itself. 2. The diagnostic debate. One of the biggest confusions around complex PTSD is that it isn't officially listed in the DSM, the handbook used by most American psychiatrists. That means many professionals simply call everything PTSD and leave it at that. But the World Health Organization's ICD takes a different path. It recognizes complex PTSD as its own diagnosis, adding 3 new elements: emotional dysregulation, a negative self-view, and difficulty in relationships. Imagine going to 2 doctors in 2 countries. One says you have PTSD, the other says complex PTSD. The same symptoms, yet 2 different labels. So which is right? The DSM that ignores it, or the ICD that names it? The real issue isn't about the manuals. It's about how people finally find a word that captures their lifelong struggle, and that single word can bring enormous relief, or more confusion. 3. Complex PTSD versus BPD. At first glance, complex PTSD can look almost identical to borderline personality disorder. Both involve emotional storms, shaky identity, and messy relationships. But if you look closer, the patterns diverge. Someone with BPD often craves connection so intensely that relationships swing between love and rage, closeness and sudden rejection. In contrast, a person with complex PTSD might withdraw completely, avoiding closeness because it feels unsafe. Picture Anna, who lives with BPD. She falls in love quickly, feels abandoned at the smallest slight, and sometimes lashes out in fear of losing someone. Now picture David, who has complex PTSD. He avoids dating altogether, spends weekends alone, and secretly believes no one could ever love him. To the outside world, Anna seems too much, while David seems not enough. Both are responses to trauma, but they are different survival strategies. Let's make it even clearer. Anna might text her partner 20 times in one night, terrified that silence means rejection. If the partner doesn't respond, anger boils up, and by morning, she swings between begging them to stay and threatening to leave first. It's chaos, exhausting for her and everyone close to her. David reacts differently. He doesn't send messages at all. In fact, he avoids relationships completely. When someone shows interest, he pulls back, convinced that love will only end in pain. Instead of drama, there is absence. Instead of fiery arguments, there is cold distance. Both Anna and David are shaped by trauma. But while one drowns in emotional storms, the other slowly disappears into isolation. And this is where the danger lies. If the two are confused, people get misunderstood, misjudged, and mislabeled. While BPD is often seen as instability, complex PTSD is marked by painful stability, being stuck in a negative self-image that rarely shifts. 4. Beyond the mind, body, and dissociation. Complex PTSD doesn't just live in memories. It often shows up in the body and in strange breaks from reality. Many people develop chronic pain, headaches, or stomach issues that doctors can't easily explain. This is called somatoform expression, where the body carries the trauma. Others experience dissociation, zoning out, feeling detached, or even watching life as if from outside themselves. Picture someone sitting in a meeting, smiling on the surface, but mentally gone, floating far away because the stress is too much. These are not random quirks. They are trauma's fingerprints in hidden places. But here's the twist. While PTSD is known for flashbacks, complex PTSD often hides in these invisible symptoms that no one connects to trauma. When trauma becomes long-term, it stops being just a memory of the past. It weaves itself into how the body and mind function every single day. 5. Why recognition matters. Understanding complex PTSD isn't just about labels, it's about dignity. When someone knows there's a name for what they feel, shame can turn into understanding. Think of a man who spent his life believing he was simply broken or too sensitive. The moment he discovers complex PTSD, his story changes. He's not weak, he's a survivor of long-term trauma. And when society learns this too, compassion replaces judgment. Society often mislabels these struggles. The person with BPD might be called toxic or too dramatic. The one with complex PTSD might be labeled lazy, antisocial, or unmotivated. These words stick like glue, adding insult to injury. Imagine David at work. He avoids after-hours gatherings, stays quiet in meetings, and seems detached. Colleagues whisper that he's unfriendly, maybe even arrogant. What they don't see is a man fighting to silence an inner voice that says, "You don't belong here." And this is why recognition matters, because when we shift the story from blame to understanding, dignity replaces judgment. Naming complex PTSD doesn't solve the pain, but it shifts the lens. It reminds us that trauma is not just about what happened, but about how it reshaped a life. Complex PTSD is more than just a longer version of PTSD. While classic PTSD often follows a single shocking event, complex PTSD grows from repeated trauma, usually early in life. The DSM may not recognize it, but the ICD does, adding struggles with emotions, identity, and relationships. It overlaps with BPD but differs in crucial ways. Withdrawal instead of chaos, a stable but negative self-image instead of constant shifting. And beyond the mind, trauma seeps into the body and into moments of dissociation. The takeaway: trauma is not only about what happened, it's about how deeply it rewrites the way we live, love, and see ourselves. If this video helped you see trauma in a new light, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Maybe you've recognized parts of your own story, or maybe it reminded you of someone you care about. Share your perspective. It could help someone else feel less alone. And don't forget to subscribe, because in the next video, we'll explore some of the biggest myths about trauma that society still believes. Stay curious and stay connected.